cheating on 3 of my wives. I'm getting more sex now than I ever have in my life, and I'm just blown away that it's happening. I have 3 women trying to blow my mind. Oddly enough, all 3 of them once hated me to the core, and all 3, with varying degrees of success, have tried to destroy me. All 3 are ex-wives. I married Helen in 1956 when I was 18 and a bit, and we were married for a little over 7 years. The marriage broke up when I came home early from work one day and found her playing hide-and-seek with a lover who was supposed to be my best friend. The divorce was very bitter, and the custody battles over the 3 children continued for the next 10 years, with neither of us wanting to give up an inch. Helen usually prevailed because the court system was set up in favor of the woman, even if you could show evidence of bad character. Helen disappeared from view, and I didn't see or hear from her for the next 20 years. Nan and I married 2 years after Helen's final divorce, and that marriage, too, lasted 7 years. It ended one day when I came home and found that I had been switched in a cult. They called it a religion, but as far as I was concerned, Jehovah's Witnesses were a sect of lunatics. When Nan couldn't convince me to join them, the marriage was effectively dissolved, and the last straw was when she called me a godless heathen. The divorce began quite peacefully. We sat down and divided things up, agreed on how much I should pay in child support for the 2 children and visitation, and then I left it up to her to file for a no-fault divorce herself. Then, without a word to me, she assigned it to an attorney belonging to her sect, and when the dust settled, all of our agreements were thrown in the trash. Instead of sharing things, she took everything. Child support was set at 3 times what we'd agreed on and twice what I could pay, and then the court gave her the right to use the kids as a tax deduction, even though I was paying more than 2/3 of their support. And then, to top it all off, this lawyer got the court to order me to pay for his services. For 3 years, the kids begged me to let them live with me, but the court wouldn't allow it because the system was once again rigged against men. Even though the children ran away from home 4 times, I still could not take them away. Fighting over the kids and betrayal during the divorce poisoned what started out as an amicable breakup. Next on my hit parade of bad decisions was Suzanne. By the time I met her, I had already made the decision to never marry again. I had also vowed not to have any more children and had a vasectomy so it would never happen again. Suzanne and I were together for 5 years before I showed weakness and put a ring on her finger. But I decided that 5 years of beautiful life together said it was for the long haul, so we said yes to each other and did it for good. At the time, I worked at night and Suzanne worked during the day, so we saw each other rarely, only on weekends. One Saturday in our 8th year together, 3 of which we've been husband and wife, I discovered how Suzanne fills her free time when I'm not around. "Guess what?" she said. "You're going to be a daddy." I just stared at her for a minute and then said, "Guess what? No, I'm not." Suzanne was a little unhappy that I hadn't told her about the vasectomy. She tried her best to convince me that the vasectomy didn't work and that I was the father, but I wasn't buying it. I had a run-in with her father when he accused me of calling his little girl an unfaithful cheater. I told him I hadn't called her anything of the sort. I merely asserted that I was not the father and that her condition, without my paternity, spoke for itself. Her father hired an expensive attorney to handle the divorce case on her part, but I won the trial when lab tests showed that there was no way it could have been me. Last year, my oldest daughter decided to get married after living with her boyfriend of 15 years and having 3 children with him. At the wedding, I saw Helen for the first time in almost 20 years and was surprised to see that she looked as attractive as she did on our wedding day. I was just as surprised to learn that she had moved back to the city and had been living here for 5 years. Our relationship hadn't smoothed out a bit over the years, and other than exchanging cold glances, we'd kept our distance from each other. Her husband was away and didn't show up for the wedding, and the 3 kids took it as an opportunity to bump Mom and Dad again. Even though Helen and I didn't speak, we found ourselves together, shoulder to shoulder, whenever anyone wanted to take family photos. Given our relationship, I was somewhat surprised when I woke up the next morning to the fact that Helen's body was only a few inches from my nose. I didn't remember getting to the motel. I only vaguely remembered someone bouncing on my body, and I certainly didn't remember meeting Helen. I found out later that the two of us had gotten really drunk, and our kids took us to the motel, put us in the same room, and hoped for the best. They got part of their wish. Helen and I didn't leave the room for 2 days, maybe 3, but she needed to get home and be there for her husband's arrival. There was no love or affection involved, just pure sex with no impurities, and when we left the motel, I had no hope of seeing her again. 2 days later, she called me and suggested we meet for lunch. Finding nothing better to do, I agreed, and when I got to the restaurant, she got straight to the point. "I have a hotel room across the street. Would you like to eat first?" The woman was insatiable. We had sex. I think we accepted that we didn't like each other, but realized that if we reduced the conversation to things like, "Make love to me," we could get along. Helen and I went out 2 or 3 times a week, and once, when her husband was out of town for a week, I slept with her in her own bed. She made sure I made love to her when she took her husband's night call, and I think she took great pleasure when she said, "Yes, honey, I miss you too," when I was with her. I didn't have a steady girlfriend at the time, but I didn't need one at the time. Helen would call me and ask me to come over and scratch her teeth. Then things got even weirder. My youngest son graduated from college, and his wife threw him a graduation party. Nan and I were invited. Abigail, his wife, assumed that the two of us would at least be on our best behavior at our son's party, and we both attended. Nan was with her husband, and they were easy enough to avoid. The party was fun, and everyone had a good time. Around 9:00 p.m., I went outside for some fresh air. I went behind the garage to get away from the patio and its lights so I could see the stars better. I was looking at them when someone came and stood next to me. I turned around and saw it was Nan. I started to walk away, but she reached out and grabbed my shoulder and said, "Please don't go." I stopped and she said, "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. You were right. He was a bunch of crazy people, and I'm sorry I put you and the kids through that. I know it's a little late, but is there anything I can do to make it up to you?" Keep in mind that I had harbored a grudge against her for years, and the fact that she now said she was sorry didn't move me. Intending to be as nasty to her as possible, I said, "You can have sex with me. It'll make things a little better." I expected to get a slap and her to leave, but she just gave me a long look and then had sex with her. I was so surprised that I just stood there with my mouth open before I came to my senses. Afterwards, I looked at her for a few moments and then said, "Maybe we'll do it again next time," and walked away, leaving her there. The following Thursday, I had just gotten home from lunch with Helen and was about to take a shower when there was a knock on the door. I opened it and saw Nan standing there. She squeezed past me into the room. I closed the door and turned to look at her. She reached into her purse and pulled something out and said, "You said you'd make love to me next time. I'd rather you did it now," and she tossed me what she had in her hand. It was a tube of Vaseline. We made love from there. When I finally pulled away from her, she asked, "So have you gotten all the craziness out of your system now?" I said, "I guess so," and she replied, "Good. Can we go to your bathroom and wash your body?" I looked at her and asked, "Why are you doing this?" "Because I'm horny." I hate to say this, but isn't that a condition your husband should be concerned about? Don't get me wrong. I love him to death, but he has a small dignity and can't satisfy me. I want a tough husband with no emotions. For the next 3 months, I had a full-time schedule, trying to take care of Helen and Nan. It amazed me that both of them could claim to love their husbands and yet have sex with me every chance they got. But I was doing well, and I wasn't about to say or do anything that would ruin it. One night, I was sitting in a booth at Barry's Irish pub when Suzanne moved into the booth next to me. Since there was a wall on one side of me and Suzanne on the other, I was stuck and could only scowl at her. She laughed and said, You're such a hypocrite. What's that supposed to mean? Both of your exes had much worse sex with you than I did, and you keep sleeping with both of them. And now you're frowning at me? That's the most appropriate definition of hypocrisy you can find. How do you know that? Honey, the only people in town who don't know it are the two dumbasses they're married to. So what do you want? The same thing they want. You can't be serious? Oh, but I am. Just remember, honey, that the only reason we're separated is because you drove yourself away from me. I didn't kick you out or leave you. Bullshit! You were my wife, and you slept with other guys. There's that hypocrisy again. I was a married woman who was alone a lot, and I needed sex, and a couple guys got lucky. I didn't leave you for any of them, so who cares? You, on the other hand, having sex with two married women behind their husbands' backs, but because you're a guy, that's okay, right? I started to say something, but Suzanne raised her hand. That's neither here nor there. What's true is that you've forgiven them both, at least enough to be bed partners, so why shouldn't I get amnesty too? We left the bar without even pulling out of the parking lot. We had sex in the back seat of her car, and then drove to my place and did the same thing for most of the night. And here we are. I make love to all three of my ex-wives more than I ever did when I was married to them, and I have to admit that I enjoy it. Suzanne insists that we get back together, and I keep telling her, maybe, but not now. The real reasons I'm not ready are Nan's awesome body and the charge I get from having sex with Helen while she's on the phone telling her husband how much she loves him and misses him. If I got back together with Suzanne, she'd make me give them up, and I'm not ready for that yet. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.